occupations are treated as a kind of defining occupations. The groups engaged in such occupations are treated as defining groups. As a result, these groups will not have any kind of concentration in that occupation. Moreover, they always try to avoid that occupation, come out of that occupation. So Ambekar says, when neither the minds nor hearts are concentrating in that particular occupation, you cannot expect any kind of efficiency. I can also add here that because of this kind of a system, where all people do not have an equal opportunity to choose the occupation, to choose the profession, naturally economy suffers. For example, as students of economics, when there is a competitive economy, when there is a competition in the market, the output could be produced at the lowest cost. We call it as a most optimum point because it is produced at the lowest cost and a maximum output is produced because of the competition, because of the element of competition. But whereas in the caste system, since people do not have this, since the system does not permit an element of competition, naturally it is a kind of a rigid system, closed system, it is a kind of an imperfect economy. So in the imperfect market or a monopoly, naturally the output could be, even if you produce at with the normal profits, you know that the output level is lower compared to the competitive level of output. So this is because of the fact that it is not permitted the competition. So for want of competition, economy suffers. Here what I try to say is that not only these groups which were deprived, they would suffer socially and economically, but whole economy would suffer, its performance would be suffering on account of this kind of an closed economy, this kind of imperfect competitive situation. This is one point I would like to just mention here. Various other points have also been mentioned by the Ambedkar. His opinion was that, say for example, this caste system is also one of the important sources of unemployment, he says. Because when you see a person starving without any work, without any employment, the reason could be seen in the caste system itself. Because a person who belongs to a particular caste always wants to take up only that occupation meant for his caste, but not any other occupation. Because he thinks that it is a degraded occupation, something like that. As a result, he starves instead of taking that kind of an employment. Therefore, he says caste system is an important reason for this kind of an employment which is in existence in the country. Thus, by not permitting readjustment of occupations, caste become a direct cause of much of the unemployment existing in the country. As an economic organization, caste is therefore a harmful institution as much as it involves the subordination of man's natural powers and inclinations to the exigencies of social rules. And another problem is the untouchability, which is the byproduct of the caste system. And here Ambedkar was writing that particularly during that period, untouchables had to perform a number of economic activities without expecting any kind of remuneration. That is how they were exploited. They didn't, as you know, they didn't have any kind of human rights, particularly no economic rights. They can't bargain the wages. They don't have the right to bargain the wages. And therefore, Ambedkar says untouchability was more than a religious system. It was also an economic system worse than slavery. Untouchability as an economic system permits exploitation without obligation. Untouchability is not only a system of unmitigated economic exploitation, but is also a system of controlled economic exploitation. This I have taken from Annihilation of Caste, 1936. In view of these above reasons, particularly he made a strong case, and also for other reasons. He made a strong case in 1936 annihilation of that one, you have to annihilate the caste. Caste is a monster which comes across the path, and unless you kill this monster, there won't be any kind of an economic development or political development or social development. This was the strong belief of the Ambedkar. Therefore, he was advocating annihilation of the caste. As you know, this was the lecture supposed to be delivered at a law court, in a jackpot product mandal seminar, which was not realized. Then it came in the form of a book. Now, other thing, you see, he has also seen for this economic inequality, existing economic inequality in India, the main reason was caste system, which is based on the social inequality. Because economic occupations, wealth was also distributed on the basis of the caste hierarchy, a graded hierarchy. The victims of this system was the lowest strata. Today we are calling them as Dalits, tribes. He used to call them as depressed classes. This is the strata which was the main victim of the system, and at the same time this is the strata which bears the whole burden of the superstructure of this caste. So this is how here this economic deprivation he tries to analyze to show that this is on account of the caste which was responsible for the social and other kind of deprivations. Therefore, there is a need for annihilating the caste. This is the argument of Ambekar. Now, other important aspects of this seminar. If you take these works, Evaluation of Provincial Finance, which was a PhD dissertation that was published, and another one is The Problem of Rupee, which was a DSc dissertation which was also published. There was also a dissertation for MA, that is Administration and Finances of East India Company, which was not published, but later published by the Maharashtra government by procuring it from the concerned university. And also to explain his brief, in brief, about the Ambedkar's plan of development, I also consulted other works of Ambedkar like minorities, states and minorities, something like that. Now, the main contribution, because it was a PhD thesis, runs into hundreds of pages, from 200 to 300 pages. Summarizing is a very difficult proposition, but one or two interesting things I would like to place before you. You see, before I go to this Evaluation of Provincial Finance in British India, his PhD dissertation, let me say one sentence regarding the Administration and Finance of East India Company. In this dissertation, with the help of the statistical data, he has shown that the revenues that were collected by the East India Company because the revenues were more than proportionately increasing as their territory was increasing in India. But they were mostly used to meet the cost of the military expenditure and they used it for other kind of an extravaganza, but nothing was left for the developmental works of the country, either for irrigation or for education or for any further public works. And they have also used it to pay for the dividends to the companies of the abroad, particularly England. So his basic argument in this dissertation was that the revenue rise was increasing very significantly, but when you look at the allocation of this revenue for the different expenditures, it has mostly gone to meet the military expenditure and towards the extravaganza rather than going towards any kind of a developmental activity. That is how this is how actually the misuse of expenditure, particularly this kind of unproductive expenditure, actually this was one of the reasons for Crown even to think of taking directly administration from the East India Company before 1857. That is what he was arguing, that is his main contribution. Crown was made to think of handing over the administration of colonial India even before 1857 mutiny, because they are involving in the extravaganza, not using for the development of the economy. Therefore, there is a need for taking over the administration. This proposition Ambedkar made. One can look into those details further, those who are interested to study this further. This was the proposition he made. Second thing, regarding the provincial finance. In the case of provincial finance, interesting things regarding the taxation, because he examined the fiscal and monetary systems. In the fiscal systems, particularly the taxation, see, land tax was the one of the imperial important taxes. Land tax was one of the important taxes of the imperial system. Under imperial system, you know, by 1833 Act, you know, that the government became strong as a central government and having exclusive powers both financial and a collection of revenues, making legislations over the provinces also. This kind of imperial system accompanied with imperial fiscal systems also. And the land tax was one of the important tax systems in this imperial regime. Ambedkar estimated during 1792-93 to 1841-42, for this period, he has estimated what was the share of the land tax out of the total taxes collected. He found that the share was so high, the share of land tax was so high that it can be called as a near approach to single tax system. That means almost more than 90% is contributed by the land tax. That is how land tax was causing a lot of burden and problems to the farmers and crippling the agricultural development. This is one point he was making. And interestingly, when this land tax was crippling the agricultural industry's development, other kind of taxes, particularly the customs taxes, customs duties. He classified customs duty into two categories. One is internal and another one is external. The internal taxes are those, they are called as transit duties, transit taxes and town duties. These transit duties, see, country was divided into two areas, customs areas for the purpose of taxation, and whenever goods were moving from one region custom to the another custom, the taxes were imposed which are called as the town duties, and which is called as transit taxes. And other one is the town duties. Whenever goods are coming from the rural areas, entering into the town, taxes are imposed. Therefore, this led to a kind of a ruralization or deurbanization. The next one is town duties. And the transit taxes crippled the growth of the trade and industry because it crippled the expansion of the manufacturing industry. This is one aspect. When the customs duties are causing harm like this, particularly internal customs, external customs, interestingly, we cannot say they are protecting the domestic trade, domestic industry. Because usually we are taught in the classroom that the external customs duties which are imposed on the imports are protecting the imports, something like that we believe. But here it is not so. Particularly in British India, what has happened, because the reason is the duties are imposed, external duties are imposed not on the basis of the nature of the economic imports, goods imported, but on the basis of the origin of the goods they are imported from. Goods which are imported from Britain are levied very low tariff, whereas goods imported from the other foreign countries levied very higher tariff. And the second thing is, and goods which are imported from the other countries, the tariff levied on the imported goods is lower than even the internal customs taxes that were imposed on the internal goods, on the Indian goods. And this is the situation particularly when Britain was putting high rates of tariffs on the imports from the India. So therefore his argument was, you cannot say that an external tariff has given any kind of protection to the goods of the country. And therefore, under these circumstances, naturally, India was not in a position to make any kind of you cannot compete in the external market, that is what this is. And at the same time, it led to the kind of deurbanization and more ruralization, something like that. Other interesting note, that is, another point let me tell from his DSc thesis, just again let me mention one point, that is, see, the exchange rate. At that time, India was on silver standard, UK was on gold standard. This was particularly during the period I am mentioning, 1875 to early part of the 19th century. That is 1875 to almost it is up to 1900, something like that. 1925. The period. Yes. I have okay. So here, the thing is, India was on silver standard, England was on gold standard. So exchange rate is determined by the exchange rate by the relative values of the gold and the silver, as you know. Because for a standard money for India, Indian currency is silver, whereas for England it is the gold. Now what has happened? When this gold-silver exchange was fluctuating, rupee pound sterling was also fluctuating. And the silver value was relatively going down compared to the gold value. Because the reasons were, there was a tremendous increase in the production of the silver, and at the same time there was an agitation all over the world